This is Judge Joe Brown, and we're listening to We All Be News, news-free Dixie for the 21st century.
And that was Tupac Amaru Shakur testifying in court back in 1995. As we all know who are Tupac fans, he was accused of basically expiring a 17-year-old kid in Houston, Texas, and killing a state trooper, I believe. This was back in 92. They accused him, the teenager said that he was listening to Tupac's music and they inspiring him to kill a state trooper. Tupac was giving some interesting testimony on his behalf, making the case that, hey, I'm not at fault for this, y'all mislabeled me and things of that nature. And that was back in 1995 when he was in prison. Very powerful testimony. And the crazy thing about it, I think he gave a testimony 2 years later, he was cleared of charges, because that was the thing that got him on the map. In 1992, Dan Quayle made him a target for mainstream America, when this kid said he did this, and, Tupac became a legend, but he was dead, so what good was it? He made his case in 95 about, hey, I didn't do this, y'all got me all wrong, I'm trying to, help kids out, and, it's like, yeah. But anyway, this is R2C2H2, the artivist, and this is We All Be News and Radio. And tonight we're doing a special tribute to the one and only Tupac Amaru Shakur. Tupac would have been 40 years old this year. So that's crazy to think about. 15 years ago, he was cut down in his prime on the Las Vegas Strip. Little did we know the impact he would have 15 years later as a worldwide icon, arguably the biggest hip-hop icon, dead or alive. And this is the ultimate Tupac tribute. I'm your host for the empowerment segment, R2C2H2, the artivist. Please feel free, family, to join us on this very interesting ride as we remember the great Tupac Amaru Shakur, the man, the artist, the legacy, and so forth. So you call in at area code 646-652-4593. That's area code 646-652-4593. If you're scared, you're on the air. But open the chat room up so you can put your questions or your comments or whatever you want to say in the chat room, and we'll probably read it on air. But this is like a very important show. I want everybody to feel welcome to be a part of this show. We got some very wonderful, honored, and esteemed guests, people from Tupac's inner circle, as well as folks who are very interested in the man and his legacy, and also find out who got rid of Tupac, the man, not the legend, not the legacy, not the immortal genius, but the mortal being, Tupac Amaru Shakur. So without further ado, we'll move on. And we got some great guests been patiently waiting for us to get on the line. Got the one and only Brother E.D.I. Brother E.D.I, are you there?
Yeah, what's up?
Yeah, well, it's an honor to have you on this, Brother E.D.I, the Outlaw Immortals, man. I got to tell you, I know y'all call y'all outlaws right now, but I call y'all the Outlaws Immortals because y'all immortal, man. Y'all made hip-hop history, man. Y'all made music history. How you doing tonight, sir?
Man, I'm feeling good. How's everybody doing out there? Shout out to all your listeners.
Oh, we're great. We're blessed to have you on, brother. This brother E.D.I, a true living legend himself, living legacy, part of Tupac's legacy of the Outlaw Immortals here joining us, blessing our show tonight. And also we got a brother out of B-More, one of Tupac's cover grounds, Brother John Potash. Are you there?
Yeah, I am. Thanks for having me.
Man, thanks for waiting, man. I know you've been patiently waiting to get on. This is John Potash, COINTELPRO expert. I also wrote a great book and DVD, The FBI War on Tupac and Black Leaders, where he basically breaks down the government's involvement in the undermining of the black liberation movement from the 60s, 70s, all the way to the present in the hip-hop nation. How you doing tonight?
Good, thanks.
I was
it's basically, I just, of course, argue that the U.S. intelligence orchestrated Tupac's murder because he was actually a black activist leader.
I think a lot of people would agree with you on that. I know Tupac, he's a lot of things to a lot of people, and I was thinking of somebody who actually knew Tupac well. Brother E.D., how did you meet Tupac? How did y'all hook up?
Well, actually, I kind of knew Tupac from day one. Our families, our mothers were friends, comrades, or whatever, what have you, since before I was born. He was probably a little boy at the time, about 2 or 3 years old, and then I came into the world, and his family, the Shakurs, Lassans, Cox, I knew them all my life. Still know them to this day. They're my family. Our families are intertwined in a lot of different ways, so pretty much from day one.
So when you say your family, like I know John Potash alluded to the fact that he thought Tupac was a black leader, a black activist, come from that background. So were your family involved in the black liberation struggle? Would you say that? Would you classify your family being as such?
My mother was involved, but she wasn't a Black Panther. My mother was just a supporter and a conscious woman all my life, and she just did what she did on the sidelines, but wasn't actual Black Panther or anything like that. She did do, marches, protests, and things like that. Like I said, my mother was very conscious and still is to this day, and very intelligent woman. So, great minds think alike, and she was actually real close friends. My father and her were real close friends with Tupac's aunt, Afeni Shakur's only sister, and that's the way that we all, came to know each other. And, through the years, we've lived with each other and, shared and lost with each other, and it's just been a lifelong thing as far as our family.
What type of person was Tupac as a young person? I know you probably get asked it a lot of times. I mean, as a young person, he died when he was 25, but, I mean, when he was younger, what type of person was it? Did you see qualities in him at that time that would make him the world-renowned icon that he is today?
Absolutely. You know what I'm saying? I'm sure you've heard, because there's been a plethora of information on Tupac. I'm sure you heard that he was a very bright child. You know what I'm saying? Of course, we were all younger than him, so Pac has always been like our big brother, our leader, whether we was just playing games in the streets of Harlem or, you know what I'm saying, all the way up until when we was in this rap game. You know what I'm saying? It was always just a big brother / leader type of relationship that we had with him. And when I say we, I'm speaking of Gaddafi, a.k.a. Yafael Fuller, and Castro. You know what I'm saying? Qatari Cox, we all grew up together, and we was, the little guys of the crew, you know what I'm saying, of the family, of a large family. So Pac was just a bright individual. He always had that light on him. He always was intelligent, always, into music, into hip-hop music, into, poetry, and he spread that amongst all of us.
And I like this too. Like, when did y'all recognize that music would be a way to get out of the struggle? I mean, y'all see yourselves a part of the struggle, but when do y'all recognize that music would be an outlet for you all to, improve your circumstances?
I mean, I guess I would say we realized it when, Pac actually got into the rap game and actually started making money from it. Up until then, it was just a dream for us. It was just something we did as little kids. It was in our system. We came up in New York City, the birthplace of hip hop. You know what I mean? So from Brooklyn to Harlem to the Bronx, hip hop was everywhere. So we always had it in us, but we didn't really think about it as a career or a way to make money or the way to feed our families until Pac actually began to be successful and actually started making money and making records and making movies. Then we all seen this was actually a possibility that we could change lives with this art form called hip hop.
Now, I know you're talking about, you stressing, I don't want to say you're stressing, but you're mentioning like how y'all grew up on the East Coast in New York and Harlem and the 5 boroughs and stuff like that. But then, people remember Tupac more for the East Coast, so-called East Coast, West Coast wars, where he was repping the West Side more than he was New York. I mean, what's the greatest misconception to you about Tupac out in the public?
Well, Pac was a warrior. He was a warrior from day one. He was raised and trained, and it was embedded in him to be a warrior. Now, he was the kind of person that was always for the underdog. And at the time, the West Coast was considered to be the underdog because out on the West, they didn't consider West Coast music to be real hip-hop. So Pac, basically took on that challenge as a way to say, nah, we all hip-hop. It's East Coast hip-hop, it's West Coast hip-hop, it's down South hip-hop, it's Midwest hip-hop. It doesn't make sense to say that one coast doesn't make real hip-hop because it doesn't sound like yours or it doesn't sound like traditional hip-hop. So that's where that began. But being from the East Coast, it wasn't never like, fuck the East Coast, it's all about the West Coast. It was about leveling the playing field and let's all be equal and let's all be one. You know what I'm saying? And that's why it all transformed into One Nation shortly before his untimely demise. But it was never, like I said before, it was never just about fuck the East Coast. You know, Pac was too smart of a person to take it to that level. Sure, he had some issues with certain individuals from the East Coast, but it was never about fuck the whole East Coast, because when we went back to New York, even in the heat of the battle, it was nothing but love. You know what I'm saying? It was nothing but love from the streets. It was nothing but love from other artists. It was just certain individuals that we had problems with that wasn't even really that major of a problem. It was just about, like I said, leveling the playing field and letting everybody know that we are hip-hop as one. You know what I'm saying? Not one coast is above the other coast.
Now, I definitely think he contributes to, what do you think he would say right now about the game right now, the fact that it's so out the box now? I mean, like you said, like everybody region is represented, even worldwide regions, you know. What would you say about the game right now, you think? Like, what would you say would be what would Tupac say would be some of the strengths of the game right now and some of the weaknesses of the game right now, in your opinion?
In my opinion, I feel like he would love the fact that it's more of, you got more artists from all over the world, not just the United States, that's able to, contribute to hip-hop. You know, I think he would have a slight issue with the lack of content and a lack of substance in hip-hop music. I'm sure he would have some opinions about that. But, like I said before, overall, I feel like, part of what he accomplished was, opening up people's taste buds to different forms of hip-hop. You know what I'm saying? For a long time, people just considered, hip-hop to only be able to come out of New York City or, something like that. And what Pac did was make everybody say, you know what, hip-hop should be accepted from wherever it's from, so long as it's good, so long as it's quality, so long as we like it. We should accept it. It doesn't matter where it's from. Now, it's almost a non-issue where somebody's from. And I think we got to thank Pac for that.
I'm going to ask you this, too. I'm just interested because when you talk about the superficiality of some of the hip-hop or rap music coming out today, and I want to ask you, what do you think about this generation rappers? What have they gotten from Tupac that got right, and what have they gotten wrong in trying to rep for the Pac legacy?
I think today's artists, some of the top artists got his work ethic from Tupac. They also adapted some of his formula, where you would make street songs for the fellas, and you would make, sentimental songs or radio-friendly songs from the females. I noticed a lot of artists, attempting to adapt that formula. I think a lot of artists took the so-called thug imagery. You know what I'm saying? Pac definitely had that persona to him, but it was mixed in with intelligence. It was mixed in with political savviness. It was mixed in with uplifting messages for the youth. A lot of cats just want to take the thug-like persona, but they don't want to give anything back. Pac would give you those thug songs, but at the same time, he would give you a Keep Your Head Up, a Dear Mama. He was so versatile in his writing that, to me, still to this day, is unmatched. You have artists that are very one-dimensional, very one-sided. You never get a full course meal from artists nowadays unless you're listening to the Outlaws or, anybody that was closely associated to Tupac. You know what I mean? Other than that, you get a lot of one-dimensional artists, and that's why I think hip-hop is suffering a little bit because, people are not willing or not bold enough or not brave enough to just give you the whole spectrum of life. Life is not just all about, the bravado, the selling drugs, the being a tough guy. You know what I'm saying? Rappers nowadays want to paint themselves like superheroes, like nothing can affect them. But what separated Pac from these guys was that he let you know that I'm vulnerable. I do have emotions. I have suffered. I have lost. I have cried. You know what I'm saying? And that's what endears people to Tupac, was that he was able to express all of those emotions in one album. You didn't need to go to another album to get, some politicalness or some emotion. You can get it all in one album listening to Tupac.
Oh, actually, I think it's very fascinating to me. I was listening to you talk about Tupac. I mean, he runs a full course meal, like you said, and then some. In terms of what he offered you as an artist, he was a fully developed, artist in terms of his expressions, of the way he was able to synthesize his emotions and get it out there to the masses. But I want to say, like, what do you think about the fact that Tupac is the greatest selling rapper of all time, but he never won a Grammy?
Well, I think, it's very clear as to why he didn't win a Grammy. Pac didn't fit in that perfectly packaged box that, artists that win Grammys normally fit into. If you look at the Grammy Awards history, they never really award the artists that kind of step outside the box somewhat. You know what I'm saying? And then also, people that vote for Grammys are usually industry people. It's not the public that votes for these Grammys. These are other industry, other artists, other record execs, other, media people, certain people like that have the right to vote for these Grammys. And it's well understood that these people were not particularly friends of Tupac. Pac was in the industry, but he wasn't an industry nigga, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Pac
exactly.
definitely kept his individualism and kept his essence very clear and free of the industry while he was here. So in order to be in that quote-unquote, club, that secret club that are Grammy Award winners and nominees and the people that vote for the Grammys, you kind of have to assimilate to what they're into. And Pac never did or got a chance to. So, it's no secret that he never won a Grammy, and it's no surprise to me. And I doubt he will ever even win a Grammy, posthumously or not, even though he's made Grammy-worthy material. We can all agree on that. But
exactly.
I've said before in many interviews, Pac was the people's champ. He never got into this industry to be accepted by the industry. He got into this industry for the love of the music and for the people. And the people continue to, raise him up high and put him at number one. I don't have to say it. His mother doesn't have to say it. And nobody else that knows Pac has to say he's number one. The people say it for him.
Yeah, I look at Tupac, man. He's up there with Bob Marley and Fela Kuti and Marvin Gaye. He's up there. He's untouchable. He's untouchable. Unfortunately, in life, anybody could be touched, as y'all say so many times. But I keep on thinking to myself, damn, man, like, you wouldn't have no Eminem or no Kanye West or even Jay-Z without no Tupac. You know what I'm saying? But he keeps winning all the awards and stuff. Like, America is weird to me because sometimes the originators don't get the props, but they're carbon copies and they're lesser than. I'm not saying that these guys got lesser than talent than Tupac, but I'm saying the people that came behind the pioneers who had to blaze the trail and pave the pavement and the road, so to speak. They get no glory. Because I think about Elvis Presley, before Elvis, there was Jackie Wilson, there was Roy Brown and Wynonie Harris. Wynonie Harris and Roy Brown are even in the Hall of Fame in rock and roll. You know what I'm saying? I think it's weird that America. Do you think it's weird that it's like Tupac get more love overseas, like a lot of black artists found out, than he can at home?
Absolutely. You know what I'm saying? Overseas, in places like Africa, the Middle East, and Germany, they have a concrete statue that travels around the country of Tupac. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, wow.
I've seen pictures of this statue. They have murals of Pac on the side of 1,000-year-old monuments in the Middle East, and in Africa, they spray paint Tupac Lives on the side of huts in South Africa and other places in Africa. So yeah, you are exactly right that he is definitely exalted in other countries. You know what I'm saying? But in the ghettos in the United States and amongst the people that struggle and fight to survive every day, he's their champion as well. And you gotta always, like you said, America's history is always known to give, the props or what have you to the second or the third or the fourth. You know what I'm saying? It's never number one that gets those props. But, like I said, Pac is the people's champion. I've been in many homes where you'll have three pictures on the wall, and one is of Jesus, one is of Martin Luther King, and the other one is Tupac. So, his his place is etched in stone. We don't need the Grammys to say Pac is great. He don't need a star on the Walk of Fame to say Pac is great, because like I said, the people say he's great, and that's what he wanted. That's what he was here for. If he didn't have the love of the people and he had all the accolades, I don't think Pac would be comfortable with that.
I mean, as a person who was in his inner circle, was Tupac comfortable with his success? Do you feel bad for being successful? I mean, in terms of material wealth and recognition, do you feel bad about that? In terms of, like, you talking about people who are struggling, and he came from the struggle. Do you feel bad by having all these riches and access to things?
Not at all, because Pac struggled for 90% of his life. You know what I'm saying? Pac didn't reach a place of monetary success and comfortableness until his last few years of living. So you add all those other 20-plus years, you know, this man was struggling and fighting just to survive, and, you know, fighting to help his mother put food on the table. So once he finally got that, he was happy as hell, as would anybody be. You know what I'm saying? He enjoyed the fruits of his labor, you know what I'm saying, as he should. You know, he never felt guilty or why do I have this success and other people don't have, because he earned it. He worked very hard for it. He, you know, blood, sweat, and tears, you know what I'm saying, like a mug. So he wasn't ashamed of it or felt bad about it at all.
As a person who actually participated in some of Tupac's last and, you know, greatest songs of all time, some of the best songs in hip-hop history, some of the best albums in hip-hop history, do you feel that the posthumous releases are at Tupac's level of, you know, I know he was a perfectionist. Do you feel like what's coming out now after he died, some of the albums, you think they up the par to the standard of his legacy? Do you agree with some of the changes, you know, in the songs and whatnot?
Not all of them. Some of them are done well. Some of them are horrible, to be honest with you. But, you know, this is what we left with. You know what I'm saying? Unfortunately, he's not here to be, you know, the one that to handle his music and do it how he would like to do it. So, you know, him, me, myself, his mother, and all the other producers and artists that, you know, dedicate their time to this music did the best we could. Sometimes it came out great. Sometimes it didn't come out so great. But I feel like we did the best we could. I know anything that I worked on, I did with love and integrity and, you know, with my homeboy's best interests at heart. But when you're making music, unfortunately, business intercedes when you're making music, and it kind of fucks up the music part of it, you know, with samples and different artist clearances and producers and publishing and points and royalties and all these things come into play. It kind of dilutes the purity of the music. But what I will say for the fans is that in the upcoming years, you will start to hear more of Pac's music in its original state, because a lot of the business has been taken care of. So now we can just put the music out in its purest form. No verses will be done over, no beats will be done over. So stay tuned. In the next couple of years, you're going to see a lot more music from Pac. And like I said, it'll be in its original form.
That's great. And I also want to talk about Johnny Jackson. How much did he contribute to Tupac's legacy in terms of music? How much do you feel he contributed to that?
Johnny was great, because what Johnny could do was take an idea that Pac had and actually bring it to life. You know what I'm saying? I tell people all the time, Pac was very much a producer as a Dr. Dre or a Kanye West. He knew exactly what he wanted his music to sound like. When he was in the studio, you would hear Pac humming bass lines and different keyboard, you know, chords and things like that to the actual session players and producers, because he knew exactly what he wanted his music to sound like. And like I said, Johnny was great because he can kind of help Pac put it all together. They worked very good as a team. You know what I'm saying? Johnny J and Pac was an excellent team, and as you can see from their catalog, they made a lot of great classic records together. You know what I'm saying? You can never take nothing from Johnny J. Johnny J was one of the, you know, the best beat makers I've ever heard, you know, and he did a lot of his production on the SB 1200, and anybody in the know knows that's like a dinosaur in the music industry. He was making classics like How Do You Want It, Hit 'Em Up, Pour Out a Little Liquor, you know what I'm saying, all those great records that we've come to know and love that we know by heart. Johnny J was making those records on the SP 1200, you know what I'm saying? So, you know, like I said, they worked great together. Johnny J and Pac was one of the best production teams, in my opinion, you know, ever in hip-hop.
Yeah, I mean, when I hear stuff, like I said, that's why it bothered me with some of the later releases after his death. It's like his energy level, I mean, Johnny Jackson, they match each other tit for tat in terms of energy level and the passion. And I feel like some of it's missing in some of the later releases after his death. You know, because like the way they changed the tempo and stuff like that. And also, I heard on Loyal to the Game that Eminem messed with his voice speed. Is that true? On some of the tracks?
There was definitely some manipulation going on. I feel like Loyal to the Game was probably the least, as far as in the terms of quality of all the albums that came out after Pac's death. It was definitely some vocal manipulation going on. I wasn't there for the production or the recording of Loyal to the Game. That was an album that Interscope had more control over. But like I said, when the business gets in the way of music, you're always going to have, you know, a fall off as far as quality is concerned.
Can I ask you, like, in your opinion, and be honest about it, I mean, do you feel that Tupac is the greatest rapper that ever lived? In your opinion? I mean, this is your homeboy. This is your road dog, your general. Do you feel like he was the greatest of all time?
In my opinion, Tupac was the realest rapper of all time and the most versatile of all time and had the most range as far as his writing. I think he is the greatest writer in hip-hop music. I think he is one of the best, you know what I'm saying, writers as far as music is concerned, period. You know what I mean? To me, he's up there with Bob and Marvin and Stevie. You know what I'm saying? And like you said, Fela Kuti as well. You know what I'm saying? I think Pac was a great writer. I don't think Pac, in terms of being a rapper, was necessarily a rapper. Pac was more like a soul artist, you know what I'm saying, that just did it in the form of music. You know what I'm saying? He was more of a musician. He was more of a political activist. He was more of an icon. He was more of, you know what I'm saying, as far as just being a rapper, I kind of feel like you kind of, you know, you kind of downgrade Pac by just calling him the greatest rapper of all time. I think, you know, you got to save that for the, you know, the Biggie Smalls and the Jay-Z's and the Lil Waynes of the world. You know what I'm saying? They're great rappers. Taking nothing from them. They're great rappers. But Pac was so much more than just a rapper that calling him the greatest rapper of all time is not even giving him enough props.
That's well said.
Ron?
Yes.
I really appreciate hearing Idi Amin's personal accounts, but speaking of his political activism, I'd like to get into that, you know, that side of his life from birth on, you know, a little bit, if you don't mind me recounting some of that. Well, just to start, I mean, I think one of the reasons he was such a brilliant rapper, besides just being a brilliant guy, was the fact that Afeni Shakur's mom, who was a Harlem Black Panther leader at one point, said she was trying to raise her Black Prince of the Revolution in Tupac, and so she would punish him by making him read the New York Times from cover to cover. So from early on, he was an incredible reader. He had read, you know, of course, according to Michael Eric Dyson, he had read hundreds of PhD level books before he was out of his teen years. And so Mutulu Shakur was taking him to activist meetings throughout his youth, to the point that when Mutulu was gone, because of the situations with intelligence frame-ups, I believe, by 12 years old, Reverend Herbert Daughtry asked him what he wanted to be when he grew up, and Tupac said a revolutionary. And that continued. You know, once Watani Tayahimba, his longtime political mentor, you know, was friends with Afeni since 1974, and who was, of course, Tupac's business manager, he said that Tupac, by the time he was about 17 years old, he was heading the New African Panthers for a year, and that was the young adult section of the New African People's Organization. And when I say young adult, I mean from about the age of 15 to 30, which was the same age as the Black Panthers when they started. So this group was active in 8 cities nationwide. So Tupac was already a national black leader before he became a star rapper, and that's why I believe, of course, one of the reasons he was targeted. Now, after he got assigned to his first label, and he had decided at some point then, Watani Tayahimba confirmed to me, he decided to take on this thug life persona. So what that was about was him just pretending to be this gangster type in order to appeal to gangs and politicize them, which was part of his Black Panther extended family plan, which was getting the Bloods and the Crips to call peace truces throughout California and then spread nationwide, and to stop fighting each other and to fight racism and fight for a better society and to turn into serious social activists. So, like Idi Amin said, he was a serious political activist. That was a whole other part of him besides just a brilliant rapper. And so he continued that, and so he was a little bit misunderstood with that thug life movement because that was his actual plan. That wasn't who he really was. His plan was politicizing, these different gang members and also politicizing other rappers. But that's just part of, what he was, is being a committed activist. So with that East Coast versus West Coast rap war you were talking about, what I found is that paralleled what was an East Coast versus West Coast Panther war. The same tactics were used. They sent, and it turns out his mother, Afeni Shakur, was part of that. What the FBI did is they sent anonymous letters back and forth between Huey Newton and the National Panther Office in Oakland and the New York Panthers while they were in jail, and got them feuding to create that East-West rap war. And National Panther spokeswoman Kathleen Cleaver told me she almost got killed in that Panther war that the FBI manufactured. And so I found the same. Tupac received anonymous letters in jail, didn't know where they were coming from, but saying, oh, you didn't know? Of course, Biggie set you up for that shooting in New York, and all these and jailhouse people who strangers were saying, oh, of course, Biggie set up that shooting in New York, when the same tactic was used against Huey Newton and the New York Panther 21. Strangers in jail were saying things to them and getting them to think that things were going on that the FBI, it turns out in FBI documents, that actually were setting up. So I argue, and the press, notoriously, the media is so controlled by U.S. intelligence, and I'll talk more later about why and how, that they help create these, East versus West Coast wars, both between the Panthers and obviously with the rap war. So that's what I think that was about. But Tupac was a committed activist, and he, eventually said that this West Coast representation was about war, fighting for Black America, East Coast and West Coast together, he said in one of his last interviews. So, that part of him is really key, and I think is what drove him with a lot of passion. And of course, he had some many other facets of his life that were, amazing. Being a brilliant guy, being, very, really funny guy. But that passion for changing society for the better is very important.
I think Brother John, you brought some great points because, you really hit the nail on the head because when you were saying that, not only was I thinking about Huey and the, East Coast and West Coast Panthers, but I was just thinking about what Fred Hampton experienced in Chicago with Jeff Fort and the A.L.L. Ruckins, or the Black Peace Stone Rangers at the time. How the FBI used them and sent letters between them saying that, the Fred Hampton want to take over the West Side, or Brother Jeff, he's trying to take over your territory, and vice versa. But I just think it's interesting because you look at Tupac. He is along the framework of a Fred Hampton, Chairman Fred Sr. In terms of when you look at Malcolm and Martin, they didn't start really becoming who they became to their late 20s or their mid to late 20s.
Right.
But you have Tupac, he's fully politicized from the womb. He's out of the black struggle. So it definitely adds up. And also it speaks to what Brother E.D. has been saying. In terms of, Brother E.D., I want to ask y'all, did y'all ever consider yourself gangster rappers? What do y'all call yourselves in terms of rap?
We never called ourselves gangster rap. Pac coined a phrase early in his career, and he called it ghetto gospel. And that's what we felt like our music was. We never considered ourselves gangsters or gangster rappers. You know what I'm saying? Not for 1 second, did Pac ever, say to me that this was gangster rap. You know what I'm saying? He said to me that this was, ghetto gospel, this was thug life music, and it was about, putting soul and putting reality into the music. So not at all did we ever consider ourselves gangster rappers, and not even to this day.
What's your greatest memory of Tupac that you have?
Some of my greatest memories of Tupac, I have so many, but if I had to pick one, it would be, the time when we spent one-on-one just talking. You know what I'm saying? We spent so much time talking about life and all aspects of life when it was just us, and I mean us, I mean me, Pac, the rest of the Outlaws. You know what I'm saying? We were actually, learning together. You know what I'm saying? And whatever we learned, we shared with each other. So that's some of my greatest memories of being with Pac personally. Just, being with the man and talking to him and learning about life and growing and experiencing life and, the good, the bad, the ugly, the great, the sorrow, all of that, all rolled up in one.
Did you have any regrets at all while being with Tupac? Were there any regrets?
No regrets whatsoever, you know what I'm saying? Because what happened was meant to happen, and what will be is going to be, no matter what we try to do in life, you know what I'm saying? So I have no regrets, you know what I'm saying? If I had one regret, is that he's not here, you know what I'm saying? That's probably my only regret, you know what I'm saying? And even in that, I'm not regretful that much because he's impacted so many lives, even in his death, that his dying wasn't in vain. You know what I'm saying? When I go around the world and I meet different people that weren't even born when Pac was alive and telling me that his music is affecting their life, and I know he didn't die in vain.
I mean, also you think, speaking of Brother John brought up some great points of him being, it's bigger than hip-hop, as Dead Prez would say. He was so political-minded. You think at the age of 40 that Tupac would still be in the hip-hop game, or he'd be doing something else like, running for office or organizing? Would he be at Occupy Wall Street or Occupy L.A. or whatever? I mean, what would he be doing right now, you think, at the age of 40?
I mean, it's hard to say because Pac was an ever-evolving person, you know what I'm saying? Even at 25, you could see he was dealing with issues and situations that normal 25-year-olds don't have to deal with until they're 40. So it's hard to say what Pac would be doing or what he would be into. Me knowing him and knowing his essence, I know whatever he would be doing, it would be for the people. You know what I'm saying? It would be for the poor. It would be for children. It would be for the strugglers of the world. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know if that would be politically or musically, but I know that was Pac's essence because, when Pac was, you know what I'm saying, didn't have the, the so-called spotlight on him, that's what he was about. You know what I'm saying? He did so much for people that, didn't share his blood or didn't share his last name that, I know that's what he was about. You know what I'm saying? So I would definitely lean to that he would be about the people, about the strugglers, about, you know what I'm saying, the disenfranchised, the less fortunate.
What do you feel about, I know I asked you about the regrets and I asked you about a lot of stuff. I mean, towards the end, did you feel like he was going to die that soon? I know he talked about, dying like the poem in the event of my demise. And also he did a song called God Bless the Dead, where he actually predicted the death of B.I.G. and of himself. And a lot of his songs he talk about death. Do you feel like he was going to die that young, though? I mean, everybody got to die, but do you feel like Tupac was going to be dead by the time he was 25, in your opinion?
Well, let me say first that God Bless the Dead, when he's talking about Biggie, he's not talking about Biggie Smalls. He's talking about another Biggie that was from New York. A lot of people assume that he was talking about Biggie, but he really wasn't. He was talking about another Biggie. But, you know what I'm saying? I'll tell you like this. When Pac died, he was the happiest that I've seen him in a long time. And he wanted to live more than at any other point in his life than I've seen in a long time. You know what I'm saying? So whether, he knew he was going to die young or not, you can listen to the music and read the poetry and know that he felt something as far as that. But, we didn't sit around and dwell on death all day. We didn't sit around and talk about dying all day. You know what I'm saying? We actually talked about living and what we was going to do in the future.
And I actually like the song Hit 'Em Up. I mean, that was like probably the greatest or most infamous rap diss song in history in terms of the emotional impact of it all. I mean, were y'all hesitant to do that song? I mean, how did that song, what was the genesis behind Hit 'Em Up?
Well, Hit 'Em Up came from the purest place of hip-hop that you can come from. Hip-hop started off with, battling and the bravado and the so-called whatever you want to call it, I'm better than you, I'm a better rapper than you. So that's where Hit 'Em Up came from. When we did Hit 'Em Up, we was thinking about records like The Bridge Is Over, you know what I'm saying, No Vaseline, you know what I'm saying, the great disc hip-hop records that we grew up listening to and that we loved, you know what I'm saying? So that's where hip-hop came from. And I agree with you, it stands the test of time. Is, you know, whenever we do shows, whenever we perform around the world, it's the #1 most requested song that we perform. You know what I'm saying? Even though to this day, we don't perform that song anymore live because we feel like we've done it enough. And, you know, in respect to Biggie Smalls, you know, another brother that died untimely that didn't deserve to die, you know what I'm saying? We don't do that song live anymore. But I do agree with you. It is, you know, as far as the quality factor, it's one of the greatest diss songs of all times.
I wanted to ask something, if you don't mind, about the last month or two of his life. Russell Simmons was quoted as saying that when there was a big rap party and everyone was smoking weed and drinking, Tupac spent several hours dancing with a woman in a wheelchair. I think it was Frank Alexander's niece, you know, or something like that. But he spent hours just dancing on the dance floor instead, and wasn't drinking or smoking the whole time. And so some people say that he was getting away from all the partying, you know, all the drinking and smoking. I read quotes of his saying he didn't go to the, you know, the clubs and as much because he was settling down more with Kadeda in the last month or two of his life. Did you see that in his last month or two?
One of the last things Pac said to us was that, you know, he was talking to us younger guys, was that to not, you know, get caught up in the whole, you know, friction we had with Biggie Smalls, because at the end of the day, Biggie Smalls was a black man. He did not wish to see Biggie Smalls dead or wish to see Biggie Smalls, you know, broke or unable to support his family. You know what I'm saying? So Pac was definitely, you know, like I said, he was an ever-evolving person, and I think Pac evolved kind of quicker than some of the rest of us. So, you know, one moment he would be, you know, knee-deep into the, you know, to the beef with Bad Boy and Biggie Smalls and Puffy, and then like a month later he would be like, well, you know, I want to do this One Nation thing. People are kind of getting it misconstrued about what I'm about, so we're going to do this One Nation project with all the rappers from around the world. So, I you know, to validate what you just said, you're absolutely right. Pac was definitely moving into another chapter as far as what he was about. You know, he felt like he kind of did the beef thing, and he was done with that, you know, and unfortunately, he didn't really get a chance to express that fully, you know what I'm saying? One of the last things he did was when he went to New York for the MTV Awards, he spoke to Nas, and they squashed whatever beef they had, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, about that.
He felt
he also said in an interview what you just said about One Nation. There's an interview out there where he says that, where I'm ready to do political benefits with Biggie and things like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He wasn't the type of person that was going to stay stuck in one place for too long. That was not, you know, Tupac Shakur.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a great point, y'all. I mean, y'all both raising great questions and points. And I also like to ask you this about Tupac. What's Suge Knight? What are your impressions of Suge Knight? And do you think that Suge Knight was a bad influence over Tupac in his career?
You know, my impressions of Suge Knight was that, one, Suge was a very smart individual. He was smarter than, you know, a lot of people, you know, kind of see. Most people kind of see Suge as just a big guy, a big bully, you know, a brutish kind of guy that, you know what I'm saying, kind of just used his muscle and his might to get what he wanted. But that's kind of a misconception. Suge is a very smart individual. This was a guy that went to college, you know what I'm saying? So by no stretch of the imagination was he a dummy. You know what I'm saying? I think that's what Pac respected most about Suge, was that he wasn't a dummy. You know what I'm saying? And Suge fought hard for his artists as far as getting them what they needed. Now, some of his business practices, or a lot of his business practices, you know, left a lot to be desired. You know what I'm saying? And you know, some of the, you know, the so-called gangster tactics that he was accused of using, you know, I would say had no place in the music industry, because this is music business. This is not the streets. But having said that, you know, you can't argue with the results the man got. You know what I'm saying? And I think Pac respected that part of Suge, because Pac was essentially, you know what I'm saying, kind of a lone wolf in the industry, you know what I'm saying, and really didn't have, you know, the kind of representation that he felt he deserved as far as getting what he was rightly owed in this music industry, dealing with the Interscopes and, you know what I'm saying, some of the movie companies that he had to deal with, that he was essentially his own manager. Even though he had management, you know, a lot of times Pac kind of knew more about the industry than the people that was representing him. So when Suge came into Pac's life, Suge kind of played a big brother role and kind of like a protector, if you will, that, you know, he was able to get Pac the type of deal that he wanted or what have you. Now, of course, after Pac died, we found out the contracts wasn't what they were supposed to be, and, you know, Afeni had to do what she had to do to make sure, you know, her son ended up, you know, getting what he was rightfully deserved. And I still don't feel like Pac was rightfully compensated, or his mother is rightfully compensated for what he contributed to the music industry. But we can go back decades and see this is a problem that plagues the music industry, not only with black artists, but just artists, period. You know what I'm saying? And that's a whole nother subject, because we would have to get in the fact that, you know, contracts and the music industry is set up for the record companies, the managers, and producers to make the bulk of the money while the artists suffer. But like I said, that's a whole nother discussion. You know, I just gave you a free topic. You can do another show on that later. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's great. Yeah,
you know what I'm
saying? Go ahead.
We could talk about that all day, you know what I'm saying? Michael Jackson, the greatest entertainer of the world, you know what I'm saying,
right,
essentially died in debt, you know what I'm saying? And you say to yourself, how does a man who has the #1 selling album of all time die in debt?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And that's because of the way the music industry is set up. But I feel like, you know, going back to Suge, like I said, you know, Suge was kind of like a big brother, a protector, so to speak, of Pac. You know what I'm saying? I think Suge meant well, but at the end of the day, I feel like Suge had the greatest assembly of talent on one label, and kind of pissed it all away. You know what I'm saying? And he will go down in history as the guy that had Dre, Snoop, and Pac under one roof and couldn't keep it all together. You know what I'm saying? I think that's Suge's legacy, unfortunately.
Yeah, the sad thing is that Dre was the creative genius to start at Death Row, and he left with nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Snoop's life was threatened by Suge Knight when he left Death Row, and some of Death Row's bodyguards went to try to beat up Snoop after he left Death Row, and the cops, Snoop runs to the cops, and the cops arrest Snoop instead of the Death Row bodyguards chasing him, and they arrest him. They say because he's got weed in his pocket or something, but and then Tupac ends up, he signed a 3 CD deal. That's how it was written, a 3 CD deal. And he said with, Machiavelli, he completed his 3 CD deal because the first album, All Eyes, was a double album. And I heard they were battling over that. Tupac had already started his own Euthanasia record label. He was ready to go after Machiavelli, but Suge Knight was, or I should say Dave Kenner, either one. Dave Kenner was the real owner of Death Row. Wouldn't let him go, wouldn't let him out of that contract, even though he satisfied the 3 CD deal. So I think, of course, high-level police detective Russell Poole found dozens and dozens of his fellow police officers at all levels of Death Row Records. He went to his superiors to ask them what were they doing there, and they told him you can consider them troubleshooters or covert agents. And I think that's exactly what it says. They were covert agents. Death Row Records had ulterior motives. They got huge amount of money for a startup record label. And Suge Knight, he could have been a bright guy and he could have done some good things for sure. But Death Row was sent to the top immediately. They put out the most negative lyrics that Tupac's ever had out there, until, of course, Machiavelli had some good lyrics, and I was glad. I mean, granted, All Eyes on Me was a great album, but the lyrics were more negative than his earlier stuff. And then when Tupac tried to get out, he has to battle them just to get out of there. And when he even wanted to take his recordings home, Dave Kenner wouldn't let him take the recordings home, and so he fired Dave Kenner. And 9 days after, I think it was actually 9 days after firing Dave Kenner, he's dead. where he's fatally shot. So Reggie Wright Jr. was the head of security at death row. He was a former police officer, they say. I argue that he was a current police officer undercover. His father was head of the gang division in the Compton Police Department. And Compton was an important place for the gangs because the Bloods and Crips in Compton was one of the first places the Bloods and Crips called a peace truce, where the Black Panthers and others, were working to get those peace truces going. And so I argue that one of their death row's motives through Reggie Wright Sr. and his son Reggie Wright Jr. was to end the Bloods Crips peace truce and stop that activist wave that was happening amongst gangs that spread all the way across the country to the Latin Kings, where the Young Lords, the Latino version of the Black Panthers, were inspired by the gang peace truce movement and convinced Latin Kings to turn into activists. So, and Latin Kings were the biggest gang in New York, 3,000 plus. So, there was a lot of ugly stuff going on at Death Row Records, and I think all those, undercover cops moonlighting there were part of that. Besides trying to end the Bloods Crips peace truce, they, of course, I argue, orchestrated Tupac's assassination. They also were trying to disrupt a lot of good activism amongst rap artists, including like the Jack the Rapper convention in Atlanta when they went down there and interrupted that, and other rap conventions. They wreaked a lot of havoc before they killed Tupac, which was one of their biggest goals. And with Tupac's fatal shooting, they ended the Bloods Crips peace truce for about a week. Dozens of people were killed in Los Angeles because Death Row spread the word that the Crips were behind killing Tupac, and it took a lot of activists spreading the word that no, we don't think the Crips were behind killing Tupac to stop that killing between the Bloods and the Crips, that ending the Bloods Crips peace truce in Los Angeles. So there was a lot of shady stuff going on at Death Row, and I don't know how much E.D. saw of that stuff I'm talking about, but there's a lot of accounts from insiders, from studio recorders, all kinds of people, and Have Gun Will Travel, and the book Labyrinth, and of course I repeat a lot of different things in my book from talking to people.
Well, Brother E.D., can you speak on what Brother John raised some excellent points? Can you speak on some of that stuff as being an inside person? You see a lot of that going on?
I was there. I was actually there on the inside, and I can definitely, see why he would say, Death Row. Death Row very well could have been a hub, so to speak, of Asian provocateurs and, to get on the inside of hip-hop and do damage to the culture as a whole. That very well may be. I know the actual people that were there, the artists. I have a more relationship with the artist, and I would say the artist was there to make music.
Yeah,
now, as far as the cops that was there, Suge, David Kenner, that remains to be seen, and only time will tell, about them. But as far as the actual artists and everybody that was there to make the music, we all had dreams. We was all young kids that just had dreams to make music, and Pac was a part of that.
I have great respect for you guys who were doing making the music, though. Sure.
But you know what is interesting, though? I don't mean to interrupt you, but I just want to point this out, because I think it's very important that people understand. Because people just look at these artists as entertainers. Entertainers are important, but entertainers are the opinion makers. They're the trendsetters. Whether it be athletes or actors or musicians. I mean, I looked at a documentary by Hella Belafonte and how the government went to lengths to try to neutralize Hella Belafonte, Paul Robeson, John Lennon, Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah,
I just think they're just entertainers. But you talk about in your book, Brother John,
my book puts Tupac in line with, of course, Harry Belafonte and Jimi Hendrix. They have a chapter on Jimi Hendrix and Bob Marley. But, of course, with Harry Belafonte, they put a CIA spy. They wormed a CIA spy to be Harry Belafonte's manager. And, of course, as soon as Harry Belafonte started getting suspicious about this guy, he fired him. But it was hard to get rid of the guy. The guy was everywhere. And the guy
he had a conference with King, and he did he was a moderator,
right?
For a thing that was on TV with Dr. King and some other civil rights people.
Yeah, even after Belafonte fired him, sure.
Mhm.
And so that's how U.S. intelligence sets it up. They get their infiltrators in all kinds of positions, and I agree with E.D. that there was some great artists out Death Row, and I'm thankful that you guys got your music out there, the Outlaws, and of course Tupac and Snoop and Dre. But it's just sad that kind of stuff was going on behind the scenes. Yeah,
absolutely. You know what? Yeah, brother E.D. Go ahead. But I was point out. You look at the beginning of I want to point out too at the beginning of the OSS, the forerunner to the CIA. You have a person like Mo Berg, who's a baseball catcher. He's a Ivy League school person, but back in the 30s, they're going overseas to Japan. They talking about people think they get in an all-star game with Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig and all these other guys, but really Mo Berg was spying for the U.S. government on Japan.
It's incredible. They spies in every industry. CIA. Right.
Yeah, I'm saying, like, we don't understand how, things can be easily co-opted. Like, I talk to old-timer friends who work at Stax and Sun Rackets. I'm in Memphis. Mm-hmm. And they always tell me, Ron, nobody dies of natural death in show business. You don't die of natural causes in show business. Even the nature of the music business, if you look at the people that actually control the music industry since the beginning, like the jazz great Ornette Coleman said, he learned there's a difference between music making and the music business. But you look at the people who actually control like the distribution and stuff like that, they come from a family of bootleggers. Now look at the Bruffman family, the founders of Seagram's. Who used to, bootleg liquor with Al Capone and Joe Kennedy back in the day. They control a lot of the music industry. With University of Indy, all these conglomerates. I'm saying behind, like Chris Rock said, behind every great wealth there's a great crime. Yeah, and that's the American way.
Yeah, look at Jimi Hendrix. His manager, this guy Michael Jeffrey, said he was former British CIA, he was a member of MI6. But all the evidence says that he continued with MI6 undercover the rest of his life. And all his actions, and he even ended up confessing when in drunken state at one point. It just came out in a book within the past year that he had Jimi Hendrix killed. And Jimi Hendrix, just like Tupac had just fired Dave Kenner, 9 days before, Jimi Hendrix fired Mike Jeffries. Within 48 hours after firing him, he was dead. So Jeffrey was really bad news, and I think he orchestrated. Now he said the reason he killed Jimi Hendrix was because he would owe him too much money, and once he left him. But the real reason, I believe, and I show all the evidence for, is that he was British intelligence working with American intelligence, and didn't like the fact that Jimi Hendrix started supporting the Black Panthers his last year of life,
right? And
got very political his last year of life. So
I think you look at Sam Cooke too. Look at Sam Cooke. This guy who started his record label, owned all his Master 2 songs, and after he killed, his wife sold out his whole catalog worth millions and millions of dollars to this day.
Mm-hmm.
He owned everything. Him and Ray Charles, guys like that. They were very savvy. But you look at you're dealing with the nature of the beast. And I want to know, Brother E.D., how do you feel about the allegations of some of the stuff that John Potash raised and also others? This LAPD officer named Greg Kading saying that Suge Knight was responsible for the hit of Biggie Smalls in retaliation, or Notorious B.I.G. in retaliation for Puffy putting a hit out on Tupac. What do you feel about some of these allegations that have been flying around for the last several years, actually? Russell Poole brought up some things about the Ramparts, like Brother John.
Well, Russell Poole has life ruined by coming out with his truth.
I think they're very sensational, and they make for great headlines. And, They make for interesting reads, and we could sit here and conspiracy theorize all we want. We could do that till the cows come home. But at the end of the day, the fact still remains that we lost two of the greatest artists as far as hip hop is concerned of all time. And I'm more concerned with the fact that they're not here than the fact of why they're not here. You know what I'm saying? I'll let the police do their job, and all those other people that get into that kind of stuff do that. You know what I'm saying? But me, it's just a sad state of events when, two kids that come from nothing finally make something of themselves and cut down at the prime of their life. You know what I'm saying? I'm more concerned about that and how do we avoid that in the future and not continue to repeat those same mistakes, whether it's the fact that we let COINTELPRO and get inside of these companies, the fact that we don't control hip-hop enough to where we can weed out these individuals and not let them come in and do the damage that they did.
Well, actually, the fact that we haven't officially solved the murders of Tupac and Biggie. I mean, almost going on 15 years, almost about to be 20 years in an eye blink. The fact that we haven't solved the killing of these high-profile black males who were successful black males in the industry. What does it say about what does it tell black people about the value of life, the value of their life in this country? Then, when you can't even solve, the murders of people that got killed in very visible ways in the public.
Well, I think we can solve it. The police, we can't expect the police to solve it because I think they were part of it. They're an extension of U.S. intelligence. There's police intelligence divisions, and the FBI overlap that. There's, for example, Detective Oldham was found out to be both FBI and New York police at the scene of Biggie's death, taking pictures within minutes of Biggie's death. So, these guys are part of it all. So when a guy like Caden comes out with his book just within the past month, and he's still working for police, and he says that Puffy's the one that ordered Tupac's death, I'm sorry, it's hard to believe him, because he said in an interview just recently, and so on truthabouttupac.com, that one of his goals was to clear the Los Angeles Police Department of any wrongdoing. So it's obvious his bias from the start. Now, a guy like Russell Poole is a different story because he risked his whole career. He had to resign from the force. He lost his wife to come out with the truth. So he was a whole different matter. He lost so much just to come out with the truth about the fact that he says he came out with the fact that Death Row killed Biggie in order to cover up their murder of Tupac. And he didn't know why, but I show all the reasons why. It was the sixth attempt on Tupac's life after the first five didn't work, starting from the time when they supposedly, stopped him for jaywalking and choked him unconscious after beating his head against the curb. Two police actions have resulted in, people in their custody's deaths. So, and then you had the Atlanta police that used a gun they stole from an Evans locker to shoot at Tupac in Atlanta, supposedly off-duty cops, and on and on. So,
they never shot at us. I was there that night. They never shot at us.
What happened, buddy?
Well, Tanya Himba said he was an eyewitness, and so was Tupac's cousin Billy Lassane. They both told me that they ran to Tupac's car, smashed the window, and shot at Tupac. So
they did smash the window, but they never fired a gun, not at all.
But plenty of witnesses said they didn't fire a gun. I'm sorry.
When they got shot. They were running when they got shot.
Okay, I'm just saying there's several other witnesses that actually did shoot. Now maybe they had a silencer on their gun. I don't know. That maybe you couldn't hear it, but there's loads of people that say shot, and that's why Tupac rolled out of the car, ran back, grabbed his bodyguard's gun, and shot back in self-defense. But why did they run up to Tupac's car and smash his window then? What was that about?
Yeah, Brother E.D., can you tell us what happened from your perspective that night?
Yeah,
what happened?
It would be good to hear.
Well, essentially, we were coming from a show. We were driving down the street. We seen two white guys basically attacking a black guy. Pac being who he wasn't going to just see nothing like that and just ride off. You know what I'm saying? So he stopped to check and see what was going on. And while we were doing that, they kind of, the cops were drunk. They were, lewd and out of control. They started, mouthing off and you know what I'm saying? After that, they walked up to Pac's window and broke it with his hand or with the butt of a gun. And then after they did that, they cowardly started running off.
Yeah,
he got clear. I mean, the thing about it, he got cleared of these charges, but what made the front page was the fact that he shot two off-duty cops. They never talked about him being cleared of the charges.
Well, yeah, he was cleared of the charges because eyewitnesses, both black and white, said that the cops shot first at Tupac, and that was what came out in court, and that's why he was cleared of the charges. So he was shooting back in self-defense. Now, granted, E.D., I understand if you might not have seen or heard the shots, but this is what just several witnesses said in court. Black and white people that didn't even know Tupac. One was a gun expert named Edward Fields. Billy Lassane said this, Tupac's biological cousin. You know, but some white bystanders said it looked like a white gang, you know, charging at Tupac. It was, you know, a strange occururence.
I mean, were they drunk? Is it true they were drunk?
Now, it was said that they were drunk, but I don't believe it. I mean, you know, if a breathalyzer wasn't done right there, how do we really know they were drunk? You know, they claimed they were drunk as if it was just a freak coincidence. But they knew exactly where Tupac's room was at the hotel. They were at his hotel very quickly. You know, why did they have a gun stolen from an evidence locker that night? Why would they be carrying that, you know, to a supposed celebration where they were getting drunk? You know, it's all kinds of things, and I think it was another botched assassination.
I'm listening, Brother John. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I could say more about it.
I was definitely there that night, and I remember it, you know, clear as day. I could definitely say nobody shot at us, but they did break a glass window of Tupac's car.
Yeah, that is something.
And Pac proceeded to get down on one knee and shoot at both cops, eventually hitting either one or both of them.
Right.
While he was on one knee, because he was an expert marksman. He was a great shot, you know, so to speak. He spent a lot of time at the shooting range. But, nobody shot at us. I just tell the truth as I see it.
No, I appreciate it, E.D. I totally respect your view
sometimes
of it.
when you have legal situations, some people will say certain things to help, you know, their loved one out. And, you know, if Pac was shot at and he shot back in self-defense, that would help him out tremendously in a legal case. But being that, you know, he's no longer here and it's nothing that can happen about it, it's no need for me to, you know, lie or, you know, exaggerate or expound on the truth. So, we want to shoot at that.
I hear you. So, but why would they? But it is incredibly dangerous and provocative to take a gun and smash someone's car window, charge at the car, smash his car window with a gun, and so that alone would make someone want to shoot back in self-defense. You know, when they're about to shoot you, when they use a gun to smash your car window. So that alone is an incredible thing to do. You know.
Yeah, I want to let people understand what we're dealing with here, because I want people to stop thinking that Tupac is just as an ordinary person, because he wasn't an ordinary person due to his family background, his political leanings, you know, and the way he was so outspoken, like what Brother E.D. said. He was Pac being Pac. So you got to look at this context right here. The reason why I want to raise the question of the conspiracy is the fact that you look at every major assassination in our country. You have police involved in every major set, whether it be down in Dallas on November 22nd, 1963, or in June 1968 in Los Angeles in the hotel kitchen, or whether it be April 4th, 1968 in Memphis, or February 21st, 1965 at the Audubon Ballroom. You have police not doing their job, or whether it be up in Chicago in December 1969. You have police involved in either a cover-up or not doing their job.
Yeah, it wasn't not doing their job. It was doing their job to kill our great leaders, I think, because with Martin Luther King, a military intelligence agent, Merrill McCullough, was the first person to arrive at Martin Luther King's body. And William Pepper says to check on life signs to make sure the assassination was successful by the government, so that the backup snipers, other military intelligence snipers, didn't have to finish the job. The first person to arrive at Malcolm X's body was Eugene Roberts. He testified later, 3 years later, against 4 years later, against Afeni Shakur and the New York Panther 21. That's how important the New York Panther 21 were. Some of them were with Malcolm X, his group, before he died, and then Eugene Roberts, undercover agent, followed them followed them into the Panthers when Lumumba Shakur started the Black Panthers in Harlem. So, you know, they were right there because they were part of the assassination, not because they weren't doing their job, I think. And and so that's why I think it's, you know, there's so much to the fact that the situation with Death Row. But then, of course, you got the New York Recording Studio lobby shooting, and the police. It was on surveillance videotape, and Kathy Scott documented the fact she talked to the security guard over there, and he told her we had it all on tape, and we offered it to the cops, and they turned it down and closed the case up. So, it's obvious what they were trying to do. They're trying to cover up what really happened and, who really did it. Now, of course, there was more that came out recently with the guy said he was paid to kill Tupac that night. But either way, there was so much, fishy about that whole situation. It looks like another assassination attempt, especially since the same cops that first arrived at the Atlanta incident, at the sexual assault incident a year earlier were the first to arrive at that New York recording studio lobby. And I found out that one of them was working with the Special Crimes Unit, which was the undercover unit that took over the kind of same duties as COINTELPRO when COINTELPRO was closed down in 1971.
Yeah, it's great information. Also, before we get too far away, like we talk about Eugene Roberts, he was one of Malcolm X's bodyguards. He was posing as a bodyguard for Malcolm X, for the Organization of African American Unity. And also, Morrell McCullough was a provocateur. He was posing as a gang member of the Memphis Invaders.
Yeah, he was a military intelligence agent. And after all the King assassination, he got promoted to the CIA. Yeah. Right.
He still lives somewhere in Memphis. I can't find him. He's a spook. He's a real spook. It's hard to find him. But also, William O'Neill, Fred Hampton's chief bodyguard, was the FBI informant. So you see, you got police organizations, intelligence organizations, heavily embedded in all these political and street gang organizations. You even look at the Black Panther Party with Drummer Pratt. He said that he knew that the slaves, the US organization did not kill Apprentice Bunchy Carter and John Huggins without being provoked or, being provoked into attacking them by FBI provocateurs.
Right.
Agent provocateurs. So, you got all this stuff going on with the Bloods and Crips. Even to me, it's kind of weird that you blame Tookie Williams for the spread of the Crip culture throughout the country when he's been in jail for half his life. How will he, being South Texas founder for years at a time, is not right. How could you blame a guy? Because first I heard about the Crips was when I saw the movie Colors by Dennis Hopper.
Mm-hmm.
A white man who did a movie about, gangs in L.A. Yeah. And when corporate America started pushing a certain form of rap out there. To me, it's like, I don't blame Tookie and Raymond Washington for what happened with the Crips. Whereas when I hear a story about Raymond Washington, they said that he was against using guns. And that the way he grew his game was by fighting people to grow the Crips. He didn't use a gun. He was into motorcycles, stuff like that. That's what his relatives say. And what some of the OGs would say. But what I'm saying is the reason why it's important to have conversations like this is so people can get beyond what the media is telling them, because the media is controlled, by certain interests, like the military industry complex.
Right.
By the multinational corporation. It's not for the people. They haven't been for the people for a long time. If you talk about Death Row Records, what makes Death Row Records different from the Washington Post? Look at the history of the Washington Post. Who founded the Washington Post? One of Dr. King's biggest critics was the Washington Post.
Yeah.
Kind of undermined his credibility towards the end.
Yeah, Watergate muckraker Carl Bernstein said that well over 400 members of the media lived dual lives in their work for the CIA, and he got that from the Senate Church Committee that exposed that in 1976. Now, when he says over 400 members of the media, he didn't mean just journalists. He meant the owners of all the media. He listed the ownership of all the media that were dually working for the CIA. And it's to carry out the business of the multinational corporations and the super richest families that want to keep all the money and actually hoard more of the money and just take more from the poor. And that's what Tupac was fighting. He was fighting for the poor. He says they got money for war but can't feed the poor. And but I think that if we can expose more of this, if we can learn their strategies, we can stop losing more of our great leaders like Tupac, like Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, but also like Fred Hampton Jr., who's still alive and doing great activism, like some Immortal Technique and other great rappers, and like the Outlaws, and hopefully we can keep them alive and keep them doing good things. So that's I hope we can more people can get active and stop this.
Well, I want to also talk, brother, let's touch upon the Quad Studios, because, Tupac Machiavelli, the 7 Day Theory is one of the greatest rap albums, one of the greatest albums to me of all time, period, in terms of this, what he was expressing with the themes and whatnot. But the song in particular, Against All Odds is a very powerful statement. And Brother E.D., we talk about the revelations of Dexter Isaacs and Jimmy, the henchman Roseman, and all these other cats. But Tupac knew already, back then who did it, correct?
Haitian Jack was working for the feds, the FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigation.
And Haitian Jack Agnew, you're right. He knew about the. I mean, brother, what do you think about that? I mean, Tupac already knew. You already knew for years who was behind this, correct?
Excuse me, can you repeat your question?
Like with the song Against All Odds, when we talk about the revelations that happened with Jimmy and Henchman Roseman this past summer, and people talk about Haitian Jack, his involvement with intelligence organizations. And Tupac made that song Against All Odds on Machiavelli, on his album that point out some of these people who were leading these double lives. So, I mean, in a lot of ways, Tupac was already aware of what was going on. Would you say, would that be correct? So the situation he found himself in.
Absolutely, he was aware. You know what I'm saying? I mean, if you listen to Pac music, you know it was stacked to the top with honesty. So I don't think Pac would get to a song like Against All Odds and start fabricating anything. So you can definitely take what he said, lyric for lyric, word for word, as the truth and as the honest to God truth as he saw it.
Was he going to lead Death Row at that moment when he got assassinated? I mean, it doesn't say he was assassinated. Was he going to lead Death Row, to your knowledge? I mean, he had his own record label, like John pointed out, euthanasia set up, and he had his own aspirations. Was he planning on leaving Death Row?
In my opinion, Pac was already off Death Row because he had fulfilled his contract. Now, whether he was going to renegotiate and get back with Death Row, or he was about to move on to other things, that remains to be seen. Unfortunately, he never got a chance to, do either one. You know what I'm saying? But his contract was definitely over and done with as far as when Machiavelli got handed in.
And was he, I also heard rumors like he was going to get married to Kadada Jones. That was his fiancée. Is that correct?
Definitely.
So what would it done, you think, with Tupac working with Quincy Jones, somebody like that? You think would Tupac would have been open to working with Quincy on some projects?
Yeah, well, I think, with that kind of power aligned, that was even more of a threat because he was going to take his radical, activist spirit, as left-wing activism and couple it with the influence of Quincy, maybe having Vibe magazine, or at least being part owner of Vibe magazine, and having his music production empire, Quincy Jones. Now, a lot of people say a lot of negative things about Quincy Jones, and I really don't know that much about him, but I'm glad that E.D.I. talked about his love for Kadada Jones and being engaged to her, and he had said in interviews that he was settling down and getting a new apartment with Kadada, and talking about having a kid with Kadada before he died. So he was getting out of his death row leased apartment and getting a new apartment, and that's the path he was on at that point. He was really settling down and taking on. Doing more with movies, he said, and doing stuff with his own label and all that. And then, having his own label would have made him even far, far richer than he already was, because he would be producing his own album and get so much more of the royalties off his own album. And every album, sold many more than the previous album. So he was just headed for huge, huge things.
Well, Brother John, let me ask you this: is it possible that Suge did not actually was involved in either of the deaths of Tupac and Biggie, but that he was actually just a front person, like kind of like I remember the movie Casino, where Kevin Pollak was like the front person. My take on it is that he was low man on the totem pole when it comes to that stuff. Dave Kenner was high man on the totem pole, so was Reggie Wright Jr., at least because he was, because of his father and because of just being head of all those police officers, that were involved. But, you got people like that, Rafael Perez and some of those other key guys that were, Rafael Perez was part of the Ramparts unit, and they were the one out of 18 divisions that had a long time history of working with U.S. intelligence, and they were committed to fighting against the gang peace movement. That I have just documents showing that, and so there was a lot of other guys that were much bigger in all this, and so that's why all those shots came at Tupac, and put Suge Knight's life in jeopardy. But the fact that not one of his bullets actually hit and hurt, Suge Knight is pretty amazing, since Suge Knight's twice the weight of Tupac, and his bullets coming from one side to the other. Yeah, right. It's pretty incredible to be so careful not to kill, Suge Knight with all his bullets coming in that direction.
So I don't know.
You think these were gangbangers that did the hit, though? Were they actual gangbangers, or were these like police people or people with a military background that did this?
Yeah, Russell Poole, high-level police detective, and a lot of other people said this was a professional hit. I mean, this wasn't just a random, gangbanger thing. This was a professional job. To have that many bullets come in that direction and not one, hurt Suge Knight. It takes an incredible professional to be able to do that. And for why would he so purposely miss Suge Knight? So there's just so many aspects of that say it wasn't a random gangbanger. There was the way it was set up, everything. There's just so much to it. These people that know these things, that investigate these things, can tell whether it's a random shooting or a professional hit. And Russell Poole was doing murder investigations for many years to understand that. And when he talked to the Las Vegas Police Department about it, they said they had a closet full of evidence that they were just sitting on that they would never come out with. And he just couldn't believe it. He couldn't believe that they were saying that. He's like, these other police officers are all, hiding all this stuff. So.
I mean, it's like the Las Vegas Police. I invited Kathy Scott and Greg Kagan to come on here, but I guess they won't be coming on here right now. But I got you, and that's great. And I want to ask you this: do you feel like it was a lack of cooperation from the witnesses or the people who were non-police?
Yasso Fula said he thought he could identify the shooters, and the media wouldn't repeat it. The police all they would repeat is the police spokesman who kept saying, we don't have any forthcoming witnesses. And other people have said that they could identify the shooters. They thought they could possibly identify him in a photo lineup. So no, I think there was covered up. The witnesses, and Kathy Scott said the normal procedure is to detain any witnesses that could possibly identify shooters, and they didn't detain. They not only didn't detain Yasso Fula, they ignored him, until of course he ends up dying the next Mike Tyson fight. But which is another tragedy, and especially he's also a great rapper, and like E.D.I, and his father was Sekou Odinga, who founded the Bronx Black Panthers. And so what a coincidence there. The top witness, who's also the son of a Black Panther leader, at the next Mike Tyson fight ends up being killed. And so a year earlier, with that New York recording studio lobby shooting, Stretch, exactly 1 year to the date, got killed. He was chased down and killed. And I argue because it was the top witness to that shooting, but it's a whole other matter. I just say that it's just really a sad loss. I'm sure it's a very sad loss for you.
Yeah, but I know Tupac, he would talk about Stretch getting killed. Switch friends, guess his new friends wanted him dead. Switch sides, guess his new friends wanted him dead. In reference to Stretch, who produced a pretty good Tupac track, "Holla If You Hear Me."
It's a great track, yeah.
It was a great track. He was great. It was a loss. But, who is Haitian Jack? Because to me, he's kind of like one of those, he's kind of like, to me, a throwback to, the John Rosellis and Sam Giancomas. But he had to work both sides of the fence.
Yeah, Tupac's New York trial lawyer, Michael Treef Warren, told me that he got Haitian Jack's rap sheet, and he said it was miles long. Tons of major cases up and down the East Coast, all dismissed. And he's a long-time activist, and he knows. He said it's a sure sign of a police intelligence agent. And that plus he had Haitian Jack's lawyer was a long-time Policeman Benevolence Association lawyer, and there's a bunch of other evidence against Haitian Jack. His case was unusually severed from Tupac's case. Michael Treef Warren said that he hasn't seen that before. That was very highly unusual. And then he gets only 2 misdemeanors for the same crime, the touching the woman's butt against her will, that Tupac got 1.5 to 4.5 years in jail for. And and the woman said that they had consensual sex. So Tupac was found not guilty for forced sodomy, attempting forced sodomy, assisting forced sodomy. He was found not guilty of all those major charges. He was only found guilty for touching this woman's butt by forcible compulsion, it says in the court documents, which I copied in my book so people can see what this really was. And so, as I say, 1.5 to 4.5 years in a maximum security prison, and Haitian Jack gets 2 misdemeanors. It's like traffic tickets virtually. So, yeah, it says more about that, about him.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
You know what? The reason why I say that is because, if you somebody like that, if you got a gangster like that, because I even look at, Whitey Bulger. The guy, he's a great example. I mean, how he was portrayed by Jack Nicholson in The Departed, where a kid commit that type of mayhem and murder, that much mayhem and murder, and always get away with it. You got to be working with the law.
Right.
You got to be a part of the law, because, you just don't. It even me question somebody like, for example, you look at organized crime like Tony Accardo. Mm-hmm. They call him the Big Tune-Up in Chicago. He never spent a day in jail.
Yeah.
He basically ran the outfit for decades and never spent a day in jail. How can somebody like that? Frank Nitti went to jail, Al Capone went to jail, Sam Giancana went to jail.
Yeah.
How can a person like that never go to jail?
Yeah, there's some of those guys are known to be working with intelligence. Charles Lucky Luciano is working with the CIA in their drug trafficking. So it's just known. That's why you look at people like they call it Nicky Barnes in New York, Mr. Untouchable. New York Times called him, and the guy under him was Lake Saunders, or this guy who appears in a Fanny Shakur's life out of nowhere and starts. She says every time she came home, put a crack pipe in her mouth. So I argue people, intelligence agents may have. There's evidence that intelligence agents may be the ones that helped hook, some people like a Fanny and Huey Newton on drugs. When they had their drug problems. So,
the CIA, but the CIA, people should know, but they don't know, they're the biggest drug traffickers on the planet.
Oh, sure.
You know what I'm saying? They helped create the LSD. They created LSD and exposed college students to it.
I completely agree with you there.
I'm just saying, they help.
Yeah,
you can't help. Look, you can't help.
What you just said about LSD is in the book Acid Dreams, which is a mainstream published book, and they come out with the fact that CIA became the biggest the LSD traffickers in the world. Selling hundreds of millions of hits by the early 1970s. And they talk about the particular people, the names of the particular people that were doing that. But that's for another book, of course.
But look at Afghanistan, even the opium thing. The Taliban actually suppressed the opium production.
Yeah.
And the CIA involvement in military intelligence now. Basically, even in Vietnam, you look at heroin. I talked to a couple of people. This guy named Sergeant Atkinson, who is nicknamed Sergeant Smack, who was the person who Frank Lucas actually worked for in order to get that Asian connection going. He was a military guy, background or whatnot. But he had actually folks running drugs through the military postal service.
Yeah,
basically, but you had to have approval of certain people overseas. It's kind of like, for example, you look at the FBI involvement in the civil rights movement back in the 60s. You had a lot of FBI informants and FBI people in the Klan killing folks.
Oh, yeah.
That's how they were able to solve these crimes so fast, because they were the main ones pulling the trigger.
Yeah, I quote, a professor who came out with this in the Baltimore Sun about how one of the top, there was a police undercover agent in the Klan involved in virtually every major Klan massacre, killing. And, what was he doing at every one of these and not arresting anyone? Was he part of it? It's disgusting. But
it's easy to talk about. But the thing about Tupac is, it's like with Tupac though, it's like Einstein. Everything is unified field theory. All this stuff is connected.
Mm-hmm.
If you just got to connect the dots, they got to see it, because we're so used to getting garbage in our way of seeing what we need to see.
Yeah, the mainstream media basically is a lot of cover up. Yeah, you got to really read between the lines and pick and choose, the tiny pieces of the truth in the mainstream media to get a lot of this stuff. But it's there, it's there if you look hard enough. It's just they completely cover it up with all kinds of other crap. But I found that 1998, the CIA, the General Counsel, Congressional Council oversees the CIA, said, admitted that the CIA was involved in cocaine trafficking. massive cocaine trafficking, and that was the whole Iran conflict.
I mean, hell, yeah, Gary Webb. I mean, look at Gary Webb. Look at Gary Webb and his Dark Alliance. I mean, it's still on the internet, but he's not here.
Right.
I mean, but Dark Alliance, I mean, basically, exonerated Freeway Rick Ross. I mean, he was guilty.
Yeah.
He was complicit, but he wasn't the mastermind.
Yeah.
Behind the cocaine distribution and whatnot.
Yeah,
and
well,
the same thing.
There was Gary Webb said there was 2 understudies to Freeway Ricky Ross. Now, Freeway Ricky Ross was getting his cocaine wholesale incredibly cheaply from CIA-connected people. Of course, we know Gary Webb documented all that. And Gary Webb won a Pulitzer Prize, documenting different things like this. Anyway, so 2 of his understudies, Freeway Ricky Ross's understudies, was the guy's name I can't remember, but the other guy was Michael Harrio.
That's the guy who gave the money to.
He started Death Row Records. Michael Harrio Harris. I mean, yeah, his wife just won a multi-million-dollar lawsuit, for the fact winning it because he actually started Death Row Records. Now,
and also, he was the first person to produce he was also the first black person to produce a Broadway play that starred.
Yeah, right. And Dave Kenner was his lawyer, so Dave Kenner has that connection there, and Dave Kenner followed it through.
And is he a mob lawyer?
Kenner's obviously an operator. I mean, the evidence points that way. I can't be sure, but the evidence seems to be pointing that way. About Kenner.
Is he still around? I thought he had cancer or something like that.
I don't know. I don't know where Kenner is now.
Okay.
Yeah.
But so you're saying Suge Knight could be like a Freeway Rick Ross character, a guy who was basically been manipulated to be the front person.
Most likely.
And not necessarily the mastermind.
Yeah, most likely. That's what I would say.
What's P. Diddy or Puffy's angle in all this? I mean, how does he?
To me, P. Diddy is just a bright, creative, opportunistic guy. I mean, I don't say that in a bad way. He's just a neutral kind of guy. He's not a political guy. But he did start becoming political with the Hip Hop Summit Action Network in, I guess the late 90s, early 2000 maybe, like 99, 2000.
The Vote or Die thing in 2004.
And
the Vote or Die thing was interesting.
What's that? Say that again?
The Vote or Die. When Kerry was running for office, the Vote or Die, 2004.
He got political with that, right. So I'm just saying, when he got even more political, I think, with the Hip Hop Summit Action Network in 99, 2000, the New York, I hear on the news that New York spent the most money they've ever spent on a gun possession charge to try to put P. Diddy in jail. And their top witness in that trial was the guy who actually shot at P. Diddy out of nowhere. That was their top witness. And so I argue, forget the one time he's not political at all, P. Diddy, but he finally gets political with his Political Action Summit, Hip Hop Summit Action Network, which actually had a lot of platform goals which matched some of the Black Panther goals, even though, of course, it wasn't as powerful and important as the Black Panthers, but it had some incredible goals. And so he's shot at in a nightclub, and then they tried to spend an incredible amount of money to put him in jail. And his lawyers find that one of the people that found the gun he supposedly had was an officer who can be traced back to the Federal Bureau of Intelligence office building. So it's all kinds of shady stuff going on like that, and so I just say, when some of these top rappers try to get political, the U.S. intelligence really comes down on them, and that's why, it came out in Miami Herald about the Miami police were being trained by the New York Police Department to have rap units that target rappers, and this guy said that they were also training them in Los Angeles, training other police departments around the country to target rappers. Now, they pretend like it's to target, corrupt rappers. Rappers are committing crimes. But there's lots of evidence that they were actually targeting rappers, for any rappers that were involved in activism. And so I just think we have to expose more and more of this and stop this,
I think, like you said, there's so much stuff you said that, was interesting to me. I'm going to be honest with you. You look at Tupac, or you look at Malcolm X, these guys were dropouts of the American education system. I mean, they were dropouts. I mean, they didn't get there. I mean, although Tupac was reading at PhD levels and, all that stuff, they had to drop out to tune in.
Right.
I mean, they don't teach you critical thinking in our schools for a reason.
I know.
We don't even supposed to be having this conversation right now.
Yeah, two brilliant people, and they didn't get it from school.
No, they didn't get it from school. Even Thomas Edison dropped out of school because, they told his mama he was stupid because he asked too many questions. Thomas Edison.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Henry Ford don't got no college degree.
I mean, I think you can get, of course, some good education in school, but generally speaking, our public schools, don't just teach, just real mainstream history, not this real history that like we're talking about. The real these really great leaders that should be, all their incredible work should be talked about in the right way. Like Martin Luther King wasn't just about racial civil rights; he was about economic rights. He was.
Well, that what got him killed though, economic rights and getting involved in foreign policy. Just like Malcolm, he got involved because Malcolm was way. In terms of international diplomacy and understanding international globalization of things and internationalizing the struggle, Malcolm was ahead of the curve before anybody over here.
Yeah, he was warning the African leaders not to get involved because with these multinational corporations in the United States, because the multinational corporations were trying to exploit them, and by doing that, he was costing the multinational corporations in the U.S. billions of dollars in broken deals, and I think that's one of the several reasons that they, assassinated him.
And I talked to his nephew. Excuse me, go ahead.
No, I'm done.
I talked to his nephew, Ronell Collins, of his half sister, Ella Collins, up from Boston. And he's talking about that Malcolm was an agent for the Chinese government in procuring, weapons for the African revolutions. And you look at what's going on in China right now, I mean, in terms of their relationship with Africa. In development, but he actually was working on behalf of the Chinese government to procure weapons for African.
I never heard that, but it's interesting.
But people. Go ahead.
Now, Malcolm, his speeches definitely bent socialist. I mean, he definitely talked about socialist. That all the African leaders are taking on socialism. So I could see him, colluding with the socialist government for, just because it was trying to help the people in general, versus the hyper-capitalists in our country who are trying to just hoard all the money and destroy people's lives, economically and other ways.
Well, it makes a lot of sense. And I'm going to tell people, I'm going to put in some songs, because this topic's too important, but I'm going to put songs in here later on after I edit it. Because, it's too important what we're talking about right here, because people need to know about this type of stuff. And they need to start thinking about this stuff, because the reason why I talk about Tupac now, Tupac would be 40, and Tupac could change like anybody else. We got a right to evolve or change or be who we want to be whenever we want to be it. But I'm afraid that what the media or what the corporations have done to Dr. King's legacy in terms of how it's portrayed and how it's projected. This is what they're trying to do with Tupac. Even Bob Marley, man, one of the most prolific biographers talked about how, Bob Marley had posters of people like Malcolm X and Marcus Garvey. Bob Marley was a radical, and he was a revolutionary in terms of his thinking and also his artistry. But now, when you think about Bob Marley, you think it's just about smoking weed for a lot of people. Smoking weed, Being a Rastafarian is not about religion. It's about, let's smoke some weed and wear these colors.
Yeah,
that's what they're projecting towards us. It's not what Bob Marley was about.
Marley's, his songs were obvious. Get up, stand up for your rights, and about revolution and all. And, a former Black Panther who, Lilu Lee told me that, or he said it somewhere else, but he left a message on some of my voicemail, talking about my stuff. When I wrote a chapter on Marley, because he said that the son of the CIA director, Colby, infiltrated their camp when he was filming Bob Marley for an important concert at the time, and he was and Bob Marley's business manager says that he poisoned Bob Marley, and that's what contributed to his young death. And this is after a CIA connected gang shot Bob Marley and shot his wife Rita Marley, almost killing him then. So
you think they injected him with something? Like some type of stuff that caused cancer? I know I talked to Dick Gregory several times. He said that Bob Marley.
That's what Lee said. He says he gave him these gift boots, and the customary thing to do is when you get like a gift like that is to try them on. He tries them on and he gets stabbed in his toe by something, a sharp object. He reaches in and he finds this sharp object in there that's right in the toe spot, and so then he ends up, Lee said he thought nothing of it, but a few months later, he's playing soccer and he crushed that toe. That toe just crumbled, and it turns out he had cancer in the toe, and that cancer spread throughout his body in no time. And so, Lee thought, and other people think, Bob Marley's manager thought that he was poisoned with a cancerous agent, a cancer-causing agent. They say it was done in Russia or Ukraine recently too, in the last 5 or 10 years. So we know there are cancer-causing agents that are like the most carcinogenic things you can get, and if you get, stabbed with it, it gets into your bloodstream. So that's what's believed that happened to him for his death.
And also, I have to say this, too. I think it's important that people understand. So just talking to you, I'm glad I talked to somebody like you because you're a very exceptional human being. And it's good to talk to people like you every once in a while to keep me hopeful about the future. So
much, Ron.
I was thinking about, I look at Tupac. I noticed something about Tupac and Malcolm and Martin. These guys were so great. They were so great at reading the crowd and giving the people what they wanted as far as their emotional connections. But they were poor people. They had poor judgment in terms of the inner circle, it seems like.
Well,
was it poor judgment on this new like Jesus that, hey, somebody's going to betray me, it's going to come from the inner circle, so I might well do what I got to do?
Yeah,
was it poor judgment on their part or naivety?
I think it was helplessness, really. I mean, it's just hard to control.
I mean, look at Fred Hampton. I mean, all these guys, they let these guys inside their circle to end up.
But how are you supposed to know? How are you supposed to know? But these guys are undercover agents. You just don't know. It's these people.
Well, be like Stalin then to kill everybody.
Yeah, no.
I'm just saying. I'm just saying. There's a paradigm. Because even Tupac understood that the good die young in this paradigm. Because when we live in, evil prospers. Evil dies in their sleep, surrounded by their loved ones at a ripe old age. Goodness die on stage in front of their family.
Say that again, E.D.I.
I said goodness could die on stage in front of their family members.
Yeah.
On a Sunday afternoon.
Yeah. Well, hopefully the good won't die young, but the good will just be creative enough to avoid to keep on doing good things, but also avoid these horrible people that are trying to keep all the wealth and sending their soldiers, their undercover agents out there to mess us up. But that's why. I guess I'm glad that Kading didn't call in because he's a member of the LAPD still, and I
wish he did. It was a hell of an interview. Maybe one day he'll call. I know it's the World Series tonight, but to me, baseball really ain't that important in the big scheme of things. There's other games that people are playing that are more important than baseball or football or basketball right now. But I want to. How can we get? One thing that people can do is read your book. You read your book, watch your DVD, and get in touch with you. What would be the best way to get copies of your books and your DVDs?
It's sold on Amazon.com, but it's also sold in some independent bookstores. It's called The FBI War on Tupac Shakur and Black Leaders, and my website though is www.fbiwarontupac.com, and at that website you can just click on. I also sell an 85-minute film based on the book on DVD with the same name, but at www.fbiwarontupac.com, you can get to the sales the way to click on the image and it goes to Amazon.com for both the book and the DVD because they're both sold on Amazon. But African World Books is my national distributor, and AK Press is another national distributor. So they get some independent bookstores. Of course, mainstream bookstores won't touch my book because it's too controversial, I think.
It's not too controversial. You treat people like they're intelligent. When you treat people like they're intelligent, that's when you're a threat. When you treat people like they're sheep or whatever, that's when you get to win the Grammys and the Oscars and get all the awards and stuff. When you treat people like people with the potential to be greater than themselves at the current moment, that's when you start getting into trouble. But it's good trouble because you're not by yourself, Brother John. I just want to appreciate. I really appreciate all the work you've done. And you come from a family of like Tupac. You come from a family of freedom fighters. So this I do a lot of acting in my family.
Yeah, but Ron, thank you so much. Thanks so much for this independent media for getting these kinds of ideas out there. You're really important for doing it.
Man. You made my day. And also, I plan to have you on some other things as well if you don't mind.
That'd be great.
You're willing to be a part of. Hope I get Greg Kids on here, but it's like you just running. I don't know what's up with these cats, but I'm just glad you came on, man, and shared so much knowledge with the people. And you have a great night, sir.
You too. I look forward to talking to you again sometime, Ron. All right.
It's going to happen, brother. Yes, sir. And this tonight's show, we'd like to thank our guest, Brother John Potash, author of the FBI War on Tupac and Black Leaders. You need to go cop not only the book, but if you're not a book person, get the DVD. It's very important. And Brother E.D.I, a living legend, outlaw immortals, one of Tupac ride or die brothers, shared a lot of an hour and some minutes with us, talking about his insights, and we look forward to helping that brother on. He raised a great idea about talking about the music business or the industry. So I'm going to do a great shout-out to my friend, Brother REbelyus, out of Memphis, Tennessee. He did a great Tupac birthday tribute I'm going to play to end this show. But don't be surprised if you see some more added-on stuff to this show in the archives. Thanks once again, everybody, for listening and for caring. And the words of great Delta of you all badly. I'm on the phone line with one of the up-and-coming, or basically one of the most known unknowns, one of the great rappers on the scene today from the Memphis, Brother REbelyus. How you doing today, sir?
I'm all right.
It's good, man. It's an honor to talk to you because we're doing a show about Tupac, and you did a great tribute song to him on his birthday, which would have been his 40th birthday this year. Unfortunately, we lost Tupac 15 years ago due to, an assassination. So I want to ask, how has Tupac influenced your career?
Well, Tupac, influenced my career a great deal. He's, one of my favorite rappers. I know last night E.D.I had said that he didn't put him in that category, but it's kind of hard to say.
And what was about him as an artist then? Because you're an artist too. What about him as a rapper that made him so great to you, or made him your favorite rapper?
He was a complete artist. He stayed in character. It's like you could never catch him off guard. He was always Pac. He was himself, I guess,
It makes you what do you think the rappers of the day are getting right about Tupac's legacy and why they're getting wrong?
They're taking the thug image, way too far. It's cool to be a thug and that's what you really are, but it's when are you gonna calm down with it? You can't be a thug forever.
So what are they getting right about Tupac, some of the rappers today?
Me personally, I don't feel like they're getting nothing right about it. I haven't seen really the people that's mainstream. I don't think they're getting nothing right with it. The underground rappers, there's a lot of good underground rappers that's keeping his legacy alive, and people that went back into the underground, people that's just doing their music, but I don't know. I don't see nobody keeping it alive like he was, really, except for his crew, the Outlaws, and people that they ain't even in the mainstream no more, but they still doing it.
You think when Tupac, when he came out with Brenda Got a Baby and, all that stuff, keep your head up, you think Tupac, as a new artist, will be able to break into the climate today in the music business and on radio? Will he have any success breaking into this market?
Most definitely, because his voice was so aggressive, it just grabbed your attention. He didn't have to have a hit song. His voice just grabbed your attention. It was just like Marvin Gaye or something. He was just, I think that was one of his idols. He was his voice just grabbed your attention no matter what he did. He could be playing or just talking to you. His voice grabbed your attention. It's the same way my voice is. He's spitting from the pit of the stomach. It's just raw. It just grabs you.
I definitely can attest to that. You definitely got talent. I want to ask you about, what was the genesis or the inspiration behind your great tribute song to Tupac?
Really, I had did this song for this, I was on MySpace, and there was a Gaddafi tribute page, and they were like, they were doing this CD for Gaddafi, like in memory of Gaddafi, one of the outlaws, and
right.
They wanted me to submit some songs. And I had did like 2 or 3 of them. I had wrote this one, and I had made another one. They told me that they liked the first one. They would have put the first one on the CD, but it didn't have a good quality to it, so they didn't just really choose it. I did this one for one of my friends on MySpace had made a book about Pac, and I had made this song, and I had wanted him to hear it, so I just made this song and put it on MySpace too. I had already wrote about it. I just recorded it after I talked to him after he wrote the book, but he told me about the book.
That's excellent, man. And how can people get in touch with you to hear some more of your great music?
You can Google me now, actually. I'm doing a CD with DJ Paul, 3 6 Mafia's, this is nephew. You can Google me. All you gotta do is type in REbelyus, REbelyus, or you can YouTube me. I'm starting to get my fan base, my following together now.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. You got a fan on the phone with you right now, and I really appreciate what you're doing because you are repping the Pac legacy and taking it to the next level with your artistry. And I want to ask you just before I go, I mean, you're a great artist. And you got a lot of insight. You're intellectual, very, you're connected in a lot of ways. A lot of folks choose not to be connected in terms of your emotional intelligence and also your ability to express yourself. What's the greatest lesson you think Pac taught us all?
Be yourself.
Brother REbelyus, I thank you so much for your time. In the words of the great Duke Ellington, we love you badly, man, and keep on repping what you're repping. And like I said, I'll do well on my end to help, get the word out about you.
All right.
All right, man. Be blessed, my brother. Take care.
All right.
All right.